Hello? Oh, yes, I'll connect you.
Welcome everybody to Education Day.
Morning to all of you. It's great to see so many people here coming to our Education Day. As with the previous ones, we have a record high number of people participating, and we like to continue that way, increasing year after year in our participation. And it's great to see you all here live, alive and kicking, I would say. After 2.5 years of struggle, it almost feels like waking up from a bad dream, as if nothing had happened and we're all back on our campus. Today, we'll talk about education. It's all about education, or perhaps more specifically about the connection, creating opportunities. And that's why we meet all here, to make connections and to look for opportunities. And connection, isn't that key in education anyhow? It starts with connecting It starts with connecting with ourselves, with yourself. As a teacher, who are you? Who do you want to become? As a lecturer, what is your role? What do we do? And I'm really happy that during the last year, we paid more and more attention to onboarding our new colleagues, starting their journey and their role as lecturer one way or the other. And the picture that you see is from such a session where, say, the senior colleagues come and talk and discuss with the newcomers what they felt starting teaching, how they felt what it was. And it's not about only the glory of standing in front of a group of students and helping them out, but also the struggles, the feeling of unsecureness when you start, or anyhow when you enter a classroom. And I participated in that, and I like to pass on to the colleagues what happened to me a long time ago. I was a second-year student in my PhD, being a TA in a second-year course on electromagnetism. I'm a physicist by background. And as a TA, you help out in the classrooms a bit. But lo and behold, one day, the main teacher came into my office and said, "Oh, by the way, next Monday you need to teach because I'll be on a conference and my colleague is also on a conference." And I was extremely nervous. Like most TAs, I was 2 weeks ahead of the pack in the class. So I talked to an older associate professor who had the room next to me. I call him older. He probably was my age now, so he wasn't that old. Yeah. But I felt differently at that time. And I told him, I need to teach. I'm 2 weeks ahead, and I'm really nervous about this. And he said, "Welcome to the club." I'm always nervous when I teach. It's part of what you do. When you're on stage, there are about 200 pairs of eyes staring at you. Sure, you feel it. Don't worry. Don't worry. Students find it natural if they pick it up. It's good for your concentration. But don't worry, because if you worry, it gets in the way. And if you don't worry, just let it go. It's fine. And I found that an extremely valuable lesson in 2 minutes. And I'd like to pass that on in sessions like these, sharing and talking about what it is. Connection also to our students, connections between the students, making them cooperative, working in teams, complementing each other rather than competing, helping them to discover, to build, to do and act, preferably on campus, face to face, as that's part of human nature. And if everything goes well, enjoying it at the same time, having a lot of fun. Education can be fun, isn't it? Connecting to the city of Delft. We should not forget that we are a large community with 28,000 young people that do stuff that young people do. And that is a blessing and a burden to the city. And we should give back. And we luckily do, as you can see here on the pictures, showing up in classrooms, at elementary schools, meeting professors in winter. We go with about 40 colleagues, well-dressed all, towards primary school kids, lecturing or talking to and with them for 1.5 hours, showing them that being active in research, doing things at the university is great, but much more importantly, that it's reachable for every kid that has the right talent and interest, and that it is not a matter of where you grew up, and we struggle with that as a city. So it's good to do, meeting, connecting with really the young ones. It's also about connecting to the future, the big challenges that we as a country and we as a globe face. And being engaged with those challenges is demanding for us as teachers, for us as scientists, and equally well for our students, the engineers of the future, the ones who will have to engineer that future and change the world for better. And all these big challenges are complex, wicked problems, we like to call them. They cannot be solved in splendid isolation by a brilliant, or perhaps not so brilliant, individual. They require cooperation, connection from people and from various disciplines. They require an open mind, looking beyond what you can see at first glance and try and have the courage to do. It is about connecting the various disciplines, not only the ones that we have here at our university, at our campus, but also in the close vicinity with Leiden University and Erasmus, trying to connect the world of social sciences to the world of engineering, to the world of liberal arts and the medical world. As these challenges require that we team up, that we connect, that we learn to listen to one another, that we learn to understand one another's language, one another's methods and approaches, and from an educational point of view, that we train our students to do so in a much better way than we can, most of us being trained in a monodiscipline. And trying to view from multiple angles. It's not always what it seems to be. And it's clear that where you stand makes a difference of what you think the world is. And if you have multiple viewpoints or various people standing at different points, you can see a completer picture. I found this a great way of showing that with art and what it means. And it's all about our future Delft engineers. That's why we gather here. That's why we have a university. Yes, a university does an awful lot of research, but a university can't walk on a single leg. It needs at least two. And if you ask me, from my part in the board of our university, our main mission is help young people, or not so young people if they are present, to develop themselves, to become professionals, to educate them. That's what we do. That is the core mission of this institute. And we do that in connection. And here is another quote that might help us if students leave school or university less curious than when they started, we have failed them. It is about helping them living with their curiosity, living up to their curiosity, enjoying that curiosity, developing that curiosity, and bringing it in to the classroom. We, as teachers, but also our students, as I guess we all have the experience, students who find what we do dull will never be motivated to perform. Students who like what we do, students who we help to like what we do, will usually flourish in a much, much better way. And that is our mission, and that is our ultimate goal, doing that, creating opportunities. And that makes this day, this speech, an invitation to all of you to think more broadly, to look beyond your own abilities, to be amazed, and to help our students with that all. Thanks very much. Annoesjka, the floor is yours again.
Okay, yes. Ooh, I hear it now. Thank you very much, Rob. Yes, as you said, connection is really key in I think everything we do as human beings, but also in our research and education. And today, of course, it's all about education. So with the help of all of you, organized by our great team, the yellow team that you can see running around all day, we will have a full day of activities. So there will be 14 sessions, which you will not be able to attend to all, but we will give you some opportunities to discuss and hear from each other what they learned in the sessions that you went to. So the 14 sessions, then there will be 3 short speakers' corners type of speeches in this hall again. It's called, in Dutch, we would call it a zeepkist sessie. So that's where you hear some actual things going on in education at our university. And, well, for the rest of the day, I will come back to you, because of course you have an award and session and drinks after. But now we're just at the beginning. We will have 2 keynote speakers today, one at the beginning, one at the end. Emanuela Tilley is already sitting here and waiting for her turn to be. I'm very, very, very honored and grateful and happy that you were able to come here. So Emanuela Tilley is a full professor at University College in London. And she's also the director of the Integrated Engineering Program. And she redesigned, together with her team, all the programs at this college to integrate engineering actual assignments from society and mathematics. So we're looking forward, and it's called the Connected Curriculum. That's not a coincidence, I think. Emanuela, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, am I on? Can you hear me? Great, okay. It is such a pleasure to be here. Oh, there we are, great, back on. I'm just even inspired by the space and by your campus and by all the faces here, so it's my pleasure to speak to you today. I'm just gonna roll through the slides, here we go. Right, when I knew and I heard about the theme today about connection and the talk that was before me, I know I'm in the right place, and I know this talk is something that's going to resonate with me. So I'm going to start in an awkward space. Well, first I'm going to tell you a little bit about UCL. So UCL is very much a sort of place where things can happen. That's how I believe it. And it was the spiritual founder of UCL is called Jeremy Bentham. He is an English philosopher. I'm doing my homework here. I am doing social reformer. And he was the founder of modern utilitarianism. He is our guiding spirit. And one of the things that comes across at UCL in everything that we do is our belief that education should be available to all who could benefit from it. So that inclusivity is something that, that remains at the heart of everything we do. So at UCL, we're the first to kind of to accept women students on equal terms to men. These very inspirational and groundbreaking things, to disregard social and religious background. And so we are very much in that disruptive thinking, and the tradition remains. And that's under which the IEP, or the Integrated Engineering Program, came about. We have this spirit. It is a teaching framework that puts that emphasis on interdisciplinarity where it never existed before, and giving... Yes, of course. That's fine. So it's about giving the programs that we had, which were very traditional, some interdisciplinarity, focusing on creativity and communication alongside teamwork, lots of projects, and introducing that more of that social dynamic. And we do this under the operation of the connected curriculum, which was being established at UCL at the same time as us creating and putting in some very practical groundwork, which was the Integrated Engineering Program. So I'm going to start with research, and I know that's really awkward when this is an education conference. However, from what I've heard and what I've seen about TU Delft, we are very similar in that research has always been our gold standard. And so we've been number 1 and 2 in terms of research power in the UK ever since it was being measured. And we've also had the largest amount of research in the STEM subjects across the UK. However, this wasn't really happening in education. And so the commitment back in 2014 was that we were going to bring together education and research. And this is not unlike lots of universities and the initiatives to do that. However, the approach that they were going to use was to rely on that research-based education. And that's not something that's unique to us either. It's the sort of thing that has been batted around for a little while. And so that was the university commitment. This is a sketch that a student created at our education day back in 2014, when our lead of our advanced learning and teaching center for the university, she came up and said, this is all well and good, but we know that research and teaching, there is a disconnect. Why is there a disconnect? And so she presented what was the integrated the connected curriculum at UCL. And so, interestingly, that this was happening, and I'll walk this through with you in a little bit, but this is the framework that was going to help UCL bring together what they were now trying to bring, that equality across research and education. And it all comes through this premise of Michaelis, where we are starting to promote and believe that the imperative of education and the imperative of research about inquiry, curiosity, critiquing, refining, discarding, advancing knowledge is the thing that brings us together, knowledge and understanding. And so policies were put through about how in education innovation through inquiry was going to be at the backbone of what we were doing and going forward. So we put policies through and guidances and visions that said we were going to get our students to think more radically and make sure that that contributes to their ability to problem solve as well. And then innovation and inquiry-based learning, the research-based learning now turned into a language of inquiry-based learning, that ability to be curious. And then engaging lots of people, making more connections beyond just the research, but through communities that we define through this framework. And so research-based education, that pedagogical implication, is now about learning through collaborative, dialogic teaching, so a lot more discussion, a lot more interaction, so that these students can and as well as the staff, the students, the communities we are with. We are challenging each other's knowledge base, our assumptions, our approaches, as well as the object of the study. And so, as I said, all of this was going on at UCL about the time that we were actually implementing the integrated engineering program. We were already about 1.5 years ahead of where UCL was, because we were already realizing that, particularly because engineering is such an applied discipline, that we needed to do more. We had such a traditional education that we needed to implement something very radical. And so UCL Engineering has 10 departments, and under every department there's 2 undergraduate degree programs. And this stretched from computer science, School of Management, we had a business school under there, as well as the traditional engineerings. We have biomedical engineering, biochemical, chemical, civil, electrical, mechanical. And so across all of those undergraduate programs, that's about 1,000 students in the first year, and then every year on, we were going to do these main core things. So our teaching was going to have these elements across all those programs, and interdisciplinarity was going to be one of them. Team-based projects, because projects only existed in the final year. We were going to bring them into the first year, even though we know that that might be difficult, but that integration or the connection between theory and practice was now becoming a realization for the students. Our mathematical curriculum was going to have a complete overhaul, in which it was no longer driven by theory, but by application. And then very much so, everything that we put in is to introduce the students to that authentic or contextual learning. Everything that we wanted to put in had to have some authenticity to it, some realism to it, and that the students knew that that was because of our strengths with industries and our community partners, but the values that we had particularly around EDI and inclusivity. And so through that, we also make space for their own professional development. And so we have, in the first 2 years, these threads of professional skills development for individuals, for all individual students. And there's no shame in saying that this is about their employability and their development as a person and that citizen that we want them to be beyond UCL. And so I'm going to walk through how there's that link between what is the connected curriculum, because many still believe it's a theoretical framework, but we are that comprehensive example of how this can truly work. And so if we start with the core principle that all students will engage with research in every year of study that they are there. And now research is inquiry-based learning. It's not just about research with academics and the research that's going on in the institution, but it is that there is a large part of that, because at UCL, that was one of our goals. So it's about asking questions like, are our students introduced to and inspired by the latest research? And do their courses and their wider activities enable them to learn and meet and challenge the researchers and the scholars that are at UCL? And so our example of this is very much like an example said in the opening. We get our students from the first year to meet the researchers. They go into the research labs, they have an introductory session with them, and they come out with an output, or they write a blog about it. And the blog is fairly technical. They do try to understand what the research is about, what the purpose of the research is, what the challenges of the research are, and where it fits within what UCL is trying to do, but also the wider world. And so that's the very introduction. It's a great way for our students to understand what's going on in the departments, because students, often don't understand the vast or the breadth of research that is happening and the innovation that is happening. And so we've implemented ways that our students are engaging with our research in every year, and that's just an example of how we do it in the first year. The students on the left there at the bottom are actually helping the team at our new campus in UCL East put sensors around bat environments so that they can, and these are computer science students, so sensors for the natural environment is something that our students engage in the first year in the computer science, and that is something that often the students don't even know that computer science is in that area. So it's about opening up their eyes to the research and the interdisciplinarity of our research and how that relates to the interdisciplinarity of their education. And so the next pillar of the connected curriculum is to create these through lines. So now that we're thinking about research in every year of the student study, we now have to think about these through lines, and we can call them what we like. We call them streams. My colleague John Mitchell often says we have to create streams, not puddles, so not individual courses, but these links that happen from first year all the way to their graduate year. But asking these questions, things like connecting a storyline of inquiry, developing those skills through these activities to build their own coherent learning narrative. How have we actually done that in our curriculum? Is there a pattern of learning activities, maybe a pattern of assessments, things where students can see their progression of their own abilities and their own knowledge base? And so for us, what that means is that students are seeing engineering in context. This is a very large through line for us, and that agrees to what we mean about the authenticity. So really, from even the first day, we congratulate students that they've come here and that really they've got the grades to come here. They're very good at maths and sciences. We acknowledge that. They have that confidence. But then we kind of say to them, but that's not enough. And it's okay, because you're at the start of this journey to also now start thinking about the wider implications of the work that you will be doing and your studies in engineering. And what we mean by that are things like we will start talking about the risk of your work, the ethics included in that, the social implications of your work, the social responsibilities that you have, anticipating some of those social responsibilities. Certainly, our students are much more familiar and comfortable with understanding the environmental implications of their work and even the financial impacts. However, this is something that we slowly drip feed from the first year all the way into the fourth year, because at the end of it, in our UK system, our students are obliged to doing those large research design-based projects, and it's no longer acceptable that their solutions are not sustainable, that they're not considered, have ethical considerations, that there isn't an articulation of the impact or the anticipation of impact on the work that they're doing. And so the only way they're going to do that is if they have the experience of considering these complexities in a systems thinking approach from the first day. So for us, that comes through this spine, another through line, equivalent word, our spine of projects. So we've introduced these projects in the first 2 years. This is a schematic I drew for my colleagues, my industrial partner colleagues, that often come into the third year projects and say, I want your students to work on this sort of project. And I say, well, actually, you can come and meet our students in the first year because they need projects and challenges in the first year. And then they've got 9 project opportunities, and therefore you have 9 opportunities to come in and sponsor one of our projects and be a partner with us. So for us, we included these 9 projects. And the other thing, as I mentioned, we also included a thread of design and professional skills, where we're not just going to get them to do teamwork from the first day of their studies and quite intensively in their second year and third year, but we are going to teach them about teamwork. We teach them about leadership. We teach them about critical thinking. We teach them about fast and slow thinking, and then they go and apply it in the projects. These concepts that actually are helping them develop the knowledge and that are associated with those skill sets. So we teach them that alongside these projects. And so that's our through path. And what that looks like is a lot of application, lots of field visits to different places outside of UCL, quite a lot of prototyping, quite a lot of making, but also a lot of communicating of their ideas. So getting them used to communicating their ideas, being assessed on the way they communicate. We teach them quite a lot of technical argument and evidence-based ideation. And so the practice of that is something that we are trying to develop through this through path or spine of projects. And this project will come up, I should say actually, oops, I should go back, apologies. I should explain the scenarios. So we have two types of projects, if you like, in terms of the way that they're delivered. We have challenges where they are full courses. It's a project-based course. And then we have scenarios where they are 1 week intensive scrums, we would say, where the students do not go to their courses in their traditional way of teaching. They go to that in the weeks before. They do their regular teaching. And then they have a whole week cut out just for their project. And the project associated with the learning that happens in that semester across all of those courses. It's a way of breaking down the modularity of their learning and giving them space to do a project. So they don't have to go to that class. They do not do any traditional teaching. They work on a project that's associated with the syllabus in each of their courses. And so those are the 6 of the 8 projects that they work on in the first 2 years. So if the next pillar of the connected curriculum is about outward looking, giving students that opportunity to make connections across their subjects, but out into the world, I would say the questions that come up with that are, can students connect outwards to their immediate subjects? Are we able to break down the barriers of the silos that currently exist in our faculty? That was a main purpose of this program. Do they build their understandings and the links appropriate to the communities that they're helping, that engineers help? And are they encouraged to analyze their ethical bearings through these outward connections? And so the examples in our integrated engineering program do come in the projects. I should say that the connected curriculum isn't really about the pedagogy, defining a pedagogy. Research-based learning is so expansive that it doesn't define whether or not it can be a lab-based course, a service learning course, a project-based course, a skills-based course. It gives you the impetus to kind of focus on these themes. And for us, that does come a lot in the projects. We've used that pedagogy quite a lot. And we do that through inviting communities to come work with our students, or our students working with different communities. Our students work with NGOs to create smart grid designs for coastal Peruvian communities. And this was an NGO in a coastal town in Peru that were putting up these small turbines because these communities had no power outside of the diesel generators. And so our students gave them ways to start creating just small smart grids so that whole communities can benefit from the small mechanical devices, as well as the efficiency of making more of those in one place. And so for us, that experiential learning, that interdisciplinarity for students in mechanical engineering to work with those across the disciplines is something that we truly focused on, particularly in the first 2 years, giving those experiences. So we do this in different ways. In the first year, it's quite controlled. So we have an interdisciplinary project where the seven departments come together under one project. But when we put teams together, they work on an aspect of that project. So biomedical engineering students, the biochemical students, and the chemical students work on a part of a project. The project is a futuristic project. It's about TB vaccination production in sub-Saharan Africa, which certainly doesn't exist now, but could exist in the future, trying to bring these manufacturing plants where the problem exists. And so we situate it there, and the students consider how making a vaccine in that part of the world is significantly different than doing it where it currently exists in mainland Europe, in the majority places. So, the biochems, the chems, and the biomedicals actually work on the bioreactor. The students in computer science and electrical work on the control systems of the bioreactor, whereas the mechanical students and the civil students work on the water and the power systems that are required at scale for that type of manufacturing. And so these are examples of interdisciplinarity in a controlled way. Now, the next one, when we do interdisciplinarity in the second year, because they've had so many projects, and they know how to kind of get up to speed with trying to tackle a problem, the interdisciplinarity is now comes in through a social-based project. And so students from across these disciplines are coming back into teams, but we don't give them defined roles. They bring their disciplinary knowledge to the project, and they steer it in a direction that works for them. And so this is where we bring in more of the UN sustainability goals. And that happens in our second year. And so, bringing in those partners, not just in the first year, but also again in the second year, give the students opportunities to showcase their work to a different audience. And this is what we mean by giving them examples to connect to a different audience, and one where it would give them different feedback and therefore ask them certainly different questions than the academics would. And so, workplace connections is the next one, giving students the ability to connect in an authentic way, to understand the profession in many ways, to think about the professional attributes and the skill sets that they need to be an engineer in such a complex world. Can students articulate those practical connections between their academic learning and that of lifelong learning? And so we do this through what I've mentioned is the design and professional skills thread, where we purposely took the credits that used to be in the third and fourth year, which was the accreditation module, where they would think about ethics and they'd maybe write a paper. And we took those credits and we moved it into the first and second year, so we can start introducing them to the skills that we know the workplace is lacking, but also that they need to develop who they want to be, the type of engineer that they want to be. This was incredibly informed by these reports by the World Economic Forum, as well as our community partners and our industrial partners. And so, as well as accreditation, of course. Our accreditation standards have only just caught up in terms of trying to ensure that our students are really taking into account sustainability, security and risk, teamworking and collaboration, as well as EDI and ethics. So we were kind of ahead of the game to say, okay, if they are going to develop these skills, if they are going to individually develop as professionals, what are the skill sets that we need? And so this course is not a lecture course. It's very much an interactive, workshop-based course. Quite a lot of our industrial partners come in, as well as partners from across UCL, to talk about their research in some of these areas, one being critical thinking. And so I just wanted to actually highlight, I keep doing that wrong. We've made the connection between design and professional skills. For our students, when we first started teaching this, we taught it in a very conceptual way. Today, you're going to learn creative thinking. Today, you're going to learn critical thinking, decision-making, risk, ethics, all of that. But then we really actually understood that it was underneath the umbrella of design that the students started to realize the authenticity of these skills. And so for us, the design cycle helps them to develop their judgment skills and their decision-making skills, that evidence that they need, but also at the same time understanding that every problem have stakeholders and users. So it's a really great way of building those connections in different facets of their learning. And the design cycle has really helped them to navigate their project work and building in these connections. So the last of the two here is authentic assessments. And so when it came into adding in all of these projects and the design and professional skills curriculum or syllabus, we had to change the assessment. We wanted to make sure that the sorts of assessments that we put in would be the sorts of things that they would be doing as a graduate engineer or at an internship. And so certainly CV writing and interviewing and design meetings where they have to show their progress on their work, communicating their ideas in an ad hoc way. Certainly those were the sorts of things that we wanted to add in. So can they demonstrate their ability to use different media to communicate their ideas and make those connections to some authentic learning? So from our students' perspective, this is the best part of their IEP experience. In 2019, when we did a major study after the first 3 years of implementing this, just before COVID, actually, our students had said that it's the authenticity, it's the assessments that are very live and interactive that they'd like the most. The ones that give them that real world context, give them the technical task and the practicalities, as well as highlighting where the skills come in when they do their projects. And I wanted to add the maths in here, because I mentioned it briefly at the start. And this has been quite a radical change, and one that has speared a new conversation across everyone in engineering about how maths should be taught in engineering. And so what we've done is our students now have a flipped learning environment where we no longer lecture, and this was to the benefit of COVID, but the expanding of our classes, we just couldn't teach 1,000 students. We brought in computation, so software, and MATLAB is at the center of their learning, which is a very different way of teaching mathematics. But every concept that they learn in the first and second year of their core mathematics curriculum is always associated with a scenario. So for instance, one of the topics, well, I shamelessly plugged my research because I'm a wind engineer. So the mathematical equations, when we teach them those in the second year, we tell them about the Navier-Stokes, and we in context to this wind engineering application and the type of mathematics that's there. So things like how to make a microphone and the mathematics underneath that, we introduce the microphone design first and then the mathematics that comes underneath that. It's a very different way of teaching maths, but it's a very authentic way and an applied way that has been working. There has been quite a conversation, and it's still evolving. The lastly is the human connections. I think you can see that through the through line, bringing in inquiry, bringing in partnerships across UCL in the form of project-based learning, experiential learning, and skills-based learning. The authenticity is there because of those human connections. We bring quite a lot of alumni back because this is a very different way of teaching and learning for our students, and many of them don't understand that this is very beneficial to the work that they're going to be doing when they graduate. And so the penny doesn't often drop for the students until after they graduate, or they often take their first placement. So bringing those students back in to say, this has really helped me to do the work in an industrial or in my practice is very, very helpful. They often listen to those students than they do the professors, orchestrating all of this. So bringing students out of their silos in the interdisciplinary way has been so important. But I think I want to end on this. This is, I think, my last slide. And I usually start my talks on this, but one of the things for us is the human connection and the human experience that influenced by our engineering. So it is the very practical ways of making connections between our researchers, our leaders in education, and the students themselves, as well as our external partners. But for us, engineering is an art, and it's a practice of changing that physical world for the use and benefit of all. And through the IEP, we are bringing the human experience into the central and core ethos of their learning. So I'll finish there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emanuela, for this really very nice talk. I think we met first time at the second global colloquium on the future of engineering education.
That's it.
And you were already gave us a talk on this, but it wasn't that elaborate as it was now,
Yeah.
To show us how you can really integrate all these aspects that you discussed.
Yeah.
Are there questions, remarks in the audience for Emanuela? Yes. Okay, now this is really good. One hand.
So brave.
Does it work?
Yeah, it should.
Yeah? Okay. Thank you for your very nice talk. It was really, really interesting. I was wondering, your framework is now in the context of engineering courses or curricula. Not all of our studies are so engineering. Is this also suitable for curricula which are not engineering background?
I think so, yes, I think so. I think one of the things that we always have to think again is about our School of Management students. So our business students, they are, we've got a very large department that we've been working with. Lots of their programs actually at the same time as 2014 have either revamped or they had a couple of new ones. So management studies, there's also data management, there's also the MBA program or the business programs. And so they have very much of the same frameworks of adding the scenarios and the projects, bringing in community from the first year, as well as they do design, but in a very entrepreneurial way. So they, in all of the courses, they have an entrepreneurial spirit because we are so heavy in that research in the School of Management. So even if you're taking management studies, entrepreneurship is a big part of that. So that's why design works for them in terms of trying to establish a framework to address a project. But they have altered, I suppose, the content of that. What are the key elements of the content in the professional skills class that are relevant to their discipline as well? I think the thing about the IEP is that we have these ideas of the skills that we want them to teach and the experiences that they want to have, but it's the content and the knowledge of the discipline that really brings it to life. And so I'm often going now across UCL to say, this worked for engineering, let me help you do it for the humanities and the social sciences. You can do project work, absolutely, but perhaps it's just not something that they've ever done before, or they don't even know how to frame a project in the area of the social sciences. So the framework of project work, experiential learning, skills-based learning, authenticity, what that means to the discipline, are things under the six, they call them petals, or the pillars. It really gives them that direction to be able to think outside the box. So yes, it has worked. The School of Management is the one that's been working the hardest.
Another question, yes. Let's help each other.
Hello, yes. Okay, so thank you very much for the nice presentation. I was very interested to hear about students reinforcing the necessity of certain information to younger year students. And then I immediately thought, how would I do that? And I don't really know how I would begin about doing that. So I was wondering, how do you do that?
Sure, absolutely.
In your university.
I mean, there's certainly some operational barriers to that that are probably unique to every institution, but we had to look at our timetable, particularly for the fourth year students to come into the first year classes. We first had to ask for volunteers, those students that would want to do it, and see what the outcomes would be. But it started off really small, because students in the fourth year felt like they didn't have the time to do it, and perhaps it was their timetable that didn't allow it to do it. But when we brought, now that we have a faculty body, that's what we've never had before, is that educational committee at the faculty level with all the disciplines together, coming together and saying, oh, mechanical engineering have brought fourth year students in because they looked at their timetable and said, you know, first year challenges is really hard. Working in teams is really hard. Working on a real project is really hard. But the fourth year students have done it and they want to come into the classroom. So operationally, how can we get this to happen? And so it was a conversation that had to happen in that department. And then often, if one department can do it, then all of them can do it because of the way in which we have that community. So it is about trying to establish a bit of an ambassadorship within those final year students, and saying, we have a lot of conversations with the fourth year students about their trajectory, I guess you would say, how they learned in the first year and how it was so intimidating. One student said to me, when you did that lecture at the beginning of our first year project, I nearly wanted to cry because I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. And if we step by step walk them through it, that fourth year student can say to those first year students, I know what you mean, but actually, let's just go through this step by step. And that's what the first year is really all about. It's that connection to the senior students to say, this is hard, you've made this transition, this is a very different way of learning, but actually, I tried this or I tried that. And actually, that's something I can't give them, right? So it is, I think in many ways, the barriers are operational, then it is aspirational. I think the students really do want to help those first years because they were that first year once. I think that is the thing that we talk about all the time. Particularly, we've got a lot of international students, and I think that's doubly hard, coming into London, learning in a different language. And so we're trying to work particularly with the international students on this active inquiry, discursive sort of learning that we really just introduce them from the first year. Is that? Okay.
Oh. Behind you. Yeah. Should work. Start working.
Yes.
Yeah, it's working. Thank you very much. Very relevant and inspiring talk.
Thank you.
I am wondering if you had done something special about recognition and rewards to keep the staff motivated and engaged in this type of programs.
Yeah, so UCL has gone through a system-wide or an institution-wide change in the way we do promotion. And so we have a track for people that are on education focused. And so the criteria in which promotion has come about is now certainly wider and recognizes quite a lot of these aspects in the connected curriculum. So if you can evidence that your education is being benefited by the enterprise or the engagement that's happening elsewhere, and that's a large focus of your work, and you are pioneering things and really kind of showing some evidence of how this is helping, then that is now recognized. These are now 6 areas of recognition for that promotion. The other thing that we tend to do as well is that I remember particularly, because I was hired to implement the IEP, not to direct it. I moved into the leadership role 2 years after that. But I was the person that actually implemented all the problem-based learning. And I had a whole, faculty staff that had never really done project-based learning. Lots of lecturers. And so that community that we've built to kind of exchange that knowledge, I think that's something that has to be in person, that there is a mentoringship that happens there. We make real connections between those people that have done a lot of the hard work and that are passing it on. The other thing that we also talk about is the turnover. So active learning is it's really engaging, exhausting, takes up a lot of time. It can do, especially those that aren't practiced at it. So we focus on the turnover. If you are in these courses, leading these courses, particularly those that are interactive, we kind of flip you in and out of it so that you can, almost like a sabbatical, where you can teach others and kind of take a break from it, reflect, and then come back. So there's a real exercise there of giving those that need a break, and then putting the systems in place to be able to kind of make sure that the teaching doesn't change. So certainly the promotion is wider So you can get promoted easier and it's recognized on the teaching track. And then that community that we have of mentoring is certainly something that we've had, as well as when they can't do it anymore because other things are suffering, there is that opportunity to kind of give breaks, if you like, because of the system and the redundancy of the staff that we built up in terms of capacity. Does that answer your question? It doesn't really say that you get a lot of. We've got awards, teaching awards, and all of that, but I don't think those are the things that drive people. I'm not, and yes, they're good in promotion cases and stuff, but I think it's really the community and developing our practice, particularly those that really are focused on education, that we benefit the most.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, so thank you very much. You will be around here for a whole day, so if you want to have a conversation with Emanuela, that's still possible. Thank you again for a very nice presentation. Thank you. So now everyone is going to start working, I guess. So the sessions will start at 10:40. And you all signed up for a session at the first round. If you haven't, then please contact one of the team members who are recognizable in the t-shirts, not me. I don't know. So in the badge you have, it says in which session you will be, and also where it will take place. You can also see it here in the screens. If you have any questions or troubles, please ask our team members. And there will be 5 rooms in the teaching lab and 2 here in Pulse. Well, I think enjoy your time, and we'll meet here again in the teaching lab, at 11:40. See you then. Have fun.